Thank you to Morgan & Morgan for sponsoring this video.
Right now, police looking for a group of people who they say mugged a man on an F train while he was heading to work. Police say the group was carrying a baseball bat, a knife, and pieces of wood, robbing the guy, pushing him off the train even. Here's for Mark Santino.
So as subway violence continues to spiral out of control and make the news, criminals are somehow still able to get away with whatever they want down here. In spite of more troops and police pouring into what is becoming America's most dangerous public transit network on a regular basis. In fact, their presence here is doing nothing at all to stop crime. And some say all the added security down here might actually be making things worse.
On board the F train, armed with a baseball bat, pieces of wood, and a knife, police say this group walks through train cars scouting out a possible victim.
Another layer of protection underground. Governor Hochul says an additional 750 officers will be stationed on platforms and 300 more will be added to overnight trains from 9 p.m. to 5 a.m. for the next 6 months.
I think it's definitely a little bit more unsafe at night.
It's definitely reassuring.
I think it's a good idea with all the things going on, having, an extra set of eyes and hands to grab someone if they start acting up.
You're surrounded by 6 individuals. One has a switchblade knife and 2 others have what I call makeshift weapons. After victimizing not 1 but 2 individuals, 1 female in particular starts to dance.
This is a true surge. Now, Governor Kathy Hochul launched this initiative in response to a prevailing sense amongst New Yorkers who simply feel it is not safe to ride the subways right now.
The governor says trends show crimes in the subway system will likely occur overnight, and adding more police presence will help track where they're committed.
So here we have a gang of teenagers who didn't even bother wearing masks when robbing people while armed. But what nobody in charge of subway safety wants to admit is that these guys, they don't have to wear masks because we don't have any laws that can actually stop them. Which is why it's no surprise that assaults and robberies are spiraling out of control down here. Because in many cases, these crimes are no longer crimes at all and have been decriminalized, making them misdemeanors with light to no consequences. Revealing that our legal system is an absolute joke to criminals who get unlimited practice exploiting it. Plus, in the case of minors, they can't be sent to jail in most cases, even when they do something so bad it would land an adult in the slammer for years. But it's not just the subway where we see out-of-control crime. It's happening above ground too, with gangs, some made up of teenagers, going on robbery sprees in places like Central Park and Times Square. And there's now so much lawlessness in our collapsing city that police are powerless to stop it, especially when arresting a criminal just gives them practice interacting with police to better prepare them to evade New York's finest the next time they offend. Which brings us to the real reason why all of the police and National Guard members down here can't do a thing to solve our crime problems. In fact, our criminals know that the worst thing that's gonna happen to them if they do anything down here is the cops will just waste their time while they get arrested and then set free. Emboldening and training budding thugs until they become hardened crooks with plenty of practice preying upon the law-abiding. Which is why now we've got brazen gangs rampaging through subway cars with weapons. All of it caught on the security cameras our progressive leaders told us were put here to protect us without arresting anybody. When, as you're about to see, all those cameras can do is record terrible things that don't seem to happen anywhere else in America. So the F train is kind of a mess. In fact, I don't really feel all that safe filming down here. You've got people upstairs getting arrested. You've got people living in various parts of the station. It's just not a good scene. But it's not only this station. You all right, man? And unsurprisingly, it is the F train, which now finds itself in the news once again as the site where a gang of criminals took over a subway car during the morning on a workday. Which means when the law-abiding go to work, the thugs, they clock in as well.
On board the F train, armed with a baseball bat, pieces of wood, and a knife, police say this group walks through train cars scouting out a possible victim.
As the southbound F train approached the 18th Avenue station, the group focused their attention on a rider.
So this happened in the middle of January, just a couple of weeks after more police and National Guard troops were sent into the subway to stop this kind of thing from happening. They don't seem to understand that packing the subway with police won't scare away criminals who know the police can't touch them. Well, they can, and they do, but those criminals are only off the streets for a few minutes in the back of a police car before being released, if they even get arrested. And that's in the case of adults. We haven't even gotten to how lax our laws are on minors yet. And look at this, we got armed individuals like this guy who had 87 prior arrests before he was arrested for the 88th time. And let's be real, any system that's gonna release somebody 87 times has no hope of ever stemming the tide of lawlessness. In fact, a system that releases criminals instead of locking them up when they hurt others might actually just embolden them, because the only thing it teaches the bad guys is that there aren't any consequences when they do things that should get folks in trouble and used to before we decriminalize them. Plus, it just makes criminals better at interacting with law enforcement. Think about it, if you get arrested dozens of times, you're gonna know how the police take people down, you're gonna know the limits of what power they do and do not have, and you're gonna get better at evading them and not getting arrested, which will just help you be a better criminal. Making this place the equivalent of an Ivy League university for those who wish to be criminals forever. But as awful as that might sound, we're only talking about adults. In the case of minors, things are even more lenient. And as you're about to see, New York City's rules make folks like that virtually invincible when it comes to law enforcement.
You're surrounded by 6 individuals, one has a switchblade knife, and 2 others have what I call makeshift weapons. After victimizing not 1 but 2 individuals, 1 female in particular starts to dance, almost in a celebratory manner.
Yeah, that was an end zone touchdown celebration right there. These criminals, they don't fear anything. But what's crazy is that New York City actually got a warning that this type of crime was about to go through the roof last summer, and none of our leaders were paying attention apparently. And we got that warning after a baby-faced gang was committing a whole bunch of crimes in Times Square and getting away with it. Apparently the gang is made up of mostly teenagers, they're in this Trende Aragua group, and they live in one of the city's shelters for asylum seekers. And this story revealed that these folks were committing crime all over Midtown Manhattan, including in Central Park, yet even after getting arrested, they were allowed to go back to their city-funded shelter, because that's how our laws work. When somebody who's under 18 gets busted, they get released back into the custody of whoever their guardian is. And now, go figure, there is more gang activity in our rotting, falling apart, dangerous subway. And if someone does call the police and get these guys arrested, they're probably just gonna get released. If police can even find them. Right now, they don't have any leads. But they do have their pictures.
These crystal clear images are one of the keys to solving this case. The cameras.
Investigatively, it's our best tool. Where we're seeing crime after crime after crime being solved. Why? Right now, there's at least 1 camera in every train car, in every train in the city. The MTA.
So, police have their faces, which must mean that some of the $5.8 billion in funding the NYPD gets is now being spent on AI programs, combing through high school yearbooks to try and figure out who they are. Yet nobody in law enforcement or in city leadership can reassure riders that this sort of thing will not happen again, especially since no arrests have been made. And even if people do get arrested, what hope does our city have of getting them off the streets? This gang affiliated with Trende Aragua, police know they've got weapons, and they know that they live in our shelters, yet nothing can be done to stop them. They're invincible, and that invincibility surely isn't going to help riders feel safe in a subway system our leaders are doing everything they can to convince us to use on a regular basis. And what you have in the subways today is a system that is full of rampant disorder and unstoppable crime. And see if you can pick out the pain in the police chief's voice when he describes the best option the NYPD has for stopping these criminals, which he probably knows deep down isn't gonna work.
Now, with officers placed on overnight trains, the assistant chief says if this group tries walking a train to find a victim with this new police surge in place,
There's going to be a cop on every train. Now imagine that. When they're going train car to train car, they're going to see those cops. They're going to be displaced out of their comfort zone and go somewhere else.
in the Kensington section.
What a tough position to be in, to have to go out and talk to the news and tell them that your best chance to stop the criminals is to scare them away so that they bring their crime to some other part of town that just has hasn't made the news yet. Sadly, that's the reality of policing crime in a progressive city. And we've got plenty of proof that scaring away criminals is not an effective strategy. It's been almost a year since the National Guard was deployed into the subways, and we've still got crime, and they were supposed to scare away all the criminals a year ago. Which obviously did not work, and now there are even more security personnel in the subway than at any time prior to 9/11, proving that our law enforcement system here is totally broken. We're protecting criminals instead of punishing them. And for some reason, we're surprised that crime here keeps going up. Most people don't know this, but when you're seriously hurt, that injury could be worth millions of dollars. And when you're in an accident, it's important that you know how to protect your rights. Which is why you need to know about today's video sponsor, Morgan & Morgan, America's largest personal injury law firm, who doesn't just settle for lowball offers. And in just the past few months has seen verdicts of $12 million in Florida, which was 34 times higher than the highest insurance offer. Add to that $26 million and $6.8 million verdicts in Philadelphia and New York, and it should be clear that Morgan & Morgan is not your typical law firm because they win a lot. Plus, it's completely free to work with them and see if you've got a case. It just takes minutes and can all be done from your smartphone. Step 1, submit your claim online. Step 2, Morgan & Morgan's experts immediately get to work investigating. And step number 3, Morgan & Morgan takes your case and only gets paid if you win. And they can do this because they've got over 100 offices across America and over 1,000 local lawyers who are ready to fight to get you the best results possible. You can start by filing your claim with Morgan & Morgan by following this link right here, which you can also click in the description of this video. And remember, it's completely free to work with them, and they only get paid if you win, which is what you want. Once again, thank you to Morgan & Morgan for sponsoring this video. So the last thing you want to do to try and stop criminal behavior is to protect it, which only encourages it. And you'd think that New York City would have figured this out by now, but for some reason, our leaders haven't. Maybe they don't take the subway. Maybe they're perfectly okay with allowing a mental health crisis to permanently exist down here. Or maybe they don't think that any of this is an actual problem that would lead people to think and feel like the subway is unsafe. And think about it, if you're gonna allow people to just suffer in silence in the subway when they need mental health treatment, people are gonna think that nobody cares about what happens down here, and that's what the criminals think. They can tell nobody's watching out for what goes on down here, even with all the cameras that are supposed to keep people safe.
In a random attack in Lower Manhattan, the NYPD released this surveillance video of the person for whom they are looking. Please take a look. It happened yesterday inside the Cortlandt Street subway station.
So here we have a masked individual carrying a large object, and he randomly uses it to attack a total stranger for no reason. Now ask yourself something. If people feared the consequences of their actions or thought there were consequences, would they act that way? Probably not. Also ask yourself, these super expensive MTA Help Point buttons, are these actually making a difference? It doesn't look like it because they're on the platforms. These were the first progressive solutions to crime after we defunded our police and didn't have enough of them to keep people safe down here. And that's the key element to all of this. The maniacs lashing out at others for no reason. They don't think anything's going to happen to them, and it probably won't, because cameras can only do so much if the person they record is totally covered up, and if there weren't any police around to stop what happened in the first place. And the worst part about all of this is that I spoke to somebody who works down here in the subway, and they were telling me that when the police see someone committing crime, if that crime is brought to their attention, most of the time they say, hey, it's not worth pursuing because we know we're going to arrest that person, we're going to spend hours filling out reports, and we're still going to be filling out the reports after this person is released back out onto the streets. And a few minutes earlier, when the police wrote that one guy a fare evasion ticket, that was written in a station that has multiple people living in it, not getting any help from the city, revealing that the limited number of police we have and resources that we have aren't going far enough to make this place any safer or to help those who need it. But the city's actually got a new $77 million plan to put more police down here to try and scare away the criminals once and for all.
I think it's definitely a little bit more unsafe at night.
Rose Needle likes what she's seeing.
2 New York City police officers just stepped on board her L train. The NYPD is redeploying hundreds of police officers underground. The goal, to post 2 officers on every overnight subway train. 60 officers were assigned to 30 trains in phase 1.
So instead of working towards getting new laws on the books that would permanently remove criminals from our streets, we're just gonna spend more money on police to arrest the criminals that we know are down here faster and waste more of their time during the arrest and release process, which will hopefully force the criminals to go and look for other parts of town that are less well policed to commit crime. That way our leaders can say the subway is safe. However, the scary thing about this is that our police, they aren't likely to intervene in any situation except the most egregious. First of all, they aren't mental health experts who could treat or remove somebody who might be suffering from something. Also, with so much crime and so few police actually patrolling our stations, they're gonna have to pick and choose which crimes they go after and which crimes they let go. They're gonna have to ask themselves, is it worth leaving this entire place open while we go after this one thing? Because if we go over here, there's a big opportunity for criminals and the rest of this massive station.
You know, in just a matter of 4 hours, the NYPD is going to send more platoons of officers down into the transit system. It is an unprecedented deployment that appears to be paying off.
So the gangs, the criminals, the folks that are robbing others down here, it's important to remember that these are not just subway criminals. These are criminals who will go after whatever opportunity presents itself, whether it's down here or up on the streets. In fact, they're just pursuing the path of least resistance, something the police chief says presents itself 78% of the time on subway cars. Yet for the last year, our troops and police were all lined up at the train entrances, checking bags for contraband. They weren't riding the trains or patrolling the platforms. It was all for show, apparently. And now they are patrolling our stations. They are riding our trains. They're moving about. They're not just planted in one place, which riders say does make them feel better. And recent violence underground has apparently decreased since police started riding the trains. But there could be another reason for that, and that could be that the federal government is here going on massive immigration raids looking for criminals. Now, of course, not all of the criminals in the subway might be here on an immigration violation subject to deportation, but there could be a connection between the arrival of a new massive law enforcement presence that has the power not only to arrest criminals, but also to finally bring consequences into the equation for bad behavior. And now criminals are on edge, fearing crackdowns, behaving themselves so that they don't get stopped by ICE agents and have their parole status revoked, which could lead to them being removed from the country. Do you think that is what the New York City subway needs? Not just the presence of law enforcement officers, but the presence of officers who can actually take people, get them off the streets, and make the city a safer place. Instead of just rearranging the deck chairs on the Titanic, so to speak, having our criminals go from here to wherever the police aren't. Let me know. Thank you so much for watching. I'll see you in the next video.